Hello, everyone. I am Coach Kristen, and I'm going to talk today about the Abbott World Marathon Majors. I'm going to give some insight as to how to get into these races. It's extremely difficult, but if you do some planning and scheduling really well ahead of time, you'll give yourself a bit of an edge. So I'm going to go through all the different races and how you can possibly get yourself a spot in one of these coveted spots. So here's a little bit about me in case those of you are new to this channel. I am a coach. I am a coach for individuals and also for a club here in New York City. I have run a lot of marathons. I've run almost all of these majors. My story about the majors is that I was supposed to be done with the sixth one, Tokyo, in 2020. I had a spot through charity, and of course, we all know what happened in the year 2020. So I have gone on to do several of the other majors multiple times, and I have not yet gone back to Tokyo, but I have pretty good insight as to how to get into all of them, seeing as I've gotten into all of them. And if you're interested in coaching, you can visit my website. I also have a blog and some other stuff on there, so you might want to visit that if you have a chance. Okay, here's the agenda, what we are going to cover. I'm going to outline the history really quickly. Then I'm going to go over the races each individually and those paths to entry. And then I'm going to finish up with the Abbott Entry program, which is an entirely separate program that is run and managed by Abbott. Here is a little bit about the history. First of all, this race series as a concept was established in January of 2006. And at that point, it was a 5-race series, and it was created for elite marathoners. The purpose of this series was to attract marathoners and create sort of a circuit, a road circuit for marathoners to compete head to head against each other over an entire season. And there was quite a bit of money attached to this prize to the prize winners at this time. It was $500,000 for first place female and first place male. So as you can imagine, that is quite the take home at the end of one year. This was also in addition to each individual prize purse for the races. So those 5-race series, the originals going back were Boston, London, Berlin, Chicago, and New York, all in 2006. Then in February of 2013, Tokyo was added as the 6th major, and that was within the 7th year of its running. So Tokyo is not only a later addition to the series, but it's also a newer race on the whole. The inaugural Tokyo Marathon was February 13th, 2007. And for those who don't know, a lot of these other races go back multiple decades. So Chicago just celebrated the 45th this year. New York had the 50th 2 or 3 years ago. Boston had the 127th race this year in 2023. Next year, Berlin will be the 50th running of the Berlin Marathon. So as you can see, most of these races have multiple decades of history to them. And all of these races coming together was really designed in its original intention for elite marathoners. In 2015, Abbott Laboratories began their sponsorship. So they were not initially on board. Most of us know this as Abbott World Marathon Majors. Well, Abbott didn't come on board until 2015, and the series was begun in 2006. So 2016, the program is actually expanded, and it became something for regular everyday runners, you and I, amateurs, And that's when the 6-star medal was introduced. So the 6-star medal was not a thing until well into the series, until a decade into this series occurring. That is when the 6-star medal made its appearance. And then also in 2016, beginning with the April race for Boston Marathon, that's when the series decided to add the elite wheelchair division, and the prize structure was completely revamped at this point. So instead of the first place male and female winner taking home $500,000, they would begin taking home $250,000. So cut by half. And then $50,000 was awarded to each of the first male and female wheelchair racers. The prize structure for all of the additional places going down, second and third, that was also revamped. And there's prize money going back in 2006 in the very beginning for second and third place and so on. However, I didn't spell all of that out. But once these structures were revamped in 2016, it flowed all the way down. So in 2017, that's when the Dalian Wanda Group came on board, and they began a 10-year strategic sponsorship. They're a company that is based in China. And then in 2018, in July of 2018, they launched this Reach for the Stars campaign. And that is actually when all of the 6-star process and individual profiles, that's when that was created for its own individual website and for everybody to have their own personal profile to log in, keep track of stars, keep track of their times, and keep track of where they are in the process. So 2018, all this relatively new. Some of you, maybe are just starting out on this journey and you thought that this has always been the way it was. Well, that's not the case. Those of us who, have been around for a little bit have sort of seen the evolution. And I will touch on at the end the series and the 6-star concept on a whole looks to continue its evolution. So I'll touch on that a little bit here at the end. All right, going back to the 6 races, there are 3 races in the spring: Tokyo, Boston, and London. There are 3 races in the fall: Berlin, Chicago, and New York. And each of these races have their own entry process and own individual options for how to get in, who's allowed to get in, what are the standards to get in. There is no uniformity whatsoever. You cannot assume that just because this is how you got into Chicago, that is also how you can get into New York. That is not the case. Each of these races exist as its own entity, and as I said in the history section, have had its own long, decades-long history, right? Before they became part of the series. The series is the latest thing that's come on top of each of these races, right? So they didn't exist for the purpose of the series, and the entry process does not exist for the purpose of the series, right? So when you're looking at trying to get into these races, you need to look at each individually as its own problem to solve, and it may require many different steps in order to do it. We're going to go through all of that. All right, we're going to start with the first race. That's the first in the year, Tokyo Marathon. It occurs this year coming as March 3rd, 2024. I'm going to outline all of the various methods for how to get into each race, and then I'm going to go into detail into some of these as to what the dates are, the process, and on some of the costs and all of those things. So, entry methods for Tokyo: General Lottery, Charity, ITO, which stands for International Tour Operator. I'm going to go through what international tour operators are, but keep in mind that that word international is a key part of this. So if you're American and you want to run a race in America, you do not have the option of using international tour operator because you're a national, right? All right, so keep that in mind as we go along. International Tour Opera ITO, time qualifier entry, and then there's the virtual run lottery. So the general lottery for Tokyo is 11 days long. That's how long you have to enter. The odds, have changed over the years. The race has gained in popularity. All of these races have gained in popularity. Running on the whole has been exploding, so you can expect to experience quite a bit of competition, and I expect it will generally rise going forward, aside from global pandemics or things like that we are not anticipating, right? Charity. Charity for the Tokyo Marathon is completely different. It is not the same as any of the other races. It's not what we generally consider to be charity, in that you don't get a fundraiser website. You don't get months to go to your friends and say, hey, I'd really like you to give me some money so I can run this race. Hey, boss network of friends and family, hey, please donate. That is not the way the process works for charity for Tokyo. Tokyo, you have a very small window. I'm going to give you the dates when we get to the next slide, but a very small window, and you have to pay the full amount. In addition, before you are even accepted to charity, you have to be accepted for a place. You have to submit a bid to a charity of your choice. There is only one bid allowed, period. And, the list of charities is somewhere in the neighborhood of 20. They all come out at the same time. Everybody, there's a bid period. You pick one, you submit your bid, you write an essay. Some of the charities weigh the essay more than others. You have to go through individually and see which each individual charity is requesting. And so what may happen, and this happened this year, is that someone may bid, say, the minimum, and they didn't get into that charity because that charity had 20 places available and they had people bidding over the minimum. So obviously they're going to take the people that are giving the most money. Duh, right? However, there are other charities where people bid the minimum and it wasn't so competitive, and they had 20 places and 21 bids. So they were able to let people in that got that only bid the minimum, right? So it's a complete game. It's a system. You can guess. No one's going to know. You can predict. We have sort of an idea of where things are going, and that the demand is becoming greater, but there's no guarantees in this. So if you're planning to pursue this option, think about strategy. Think about what charity you're going to bid to. Think about how much you really want to put on the line, and know that you're going to be putting that money on the line yourself out of your own bank account. I will say, as someone who went through the old charity system for Tokyo, which was a complete meltdown of servers and computers crashing, this is a slight improvement. Slight. So at least you don't have to worry about things melting down and trying to log on to something, a crashing server at 3 a.m. in New York. All right. ITO, International Tour Operator, I've listed for the US. There's one option, and that is Marathon Tours and Travel. And the price, roughly, is $4,000 base for 5-night stay. So in addition to any of these costs that I'm outlining, there are things you have to expend, right? So there's flights. None of these things include flights. There's some food and things you have to pay on your own. There is also an additional fee you have to pay for the bib. So these tour packages do include the bib. However, that's a separate cost. So when I'm listing this cost, this is the base cost, and then there's extras on top. So if you're budgeting out, hopefully you're budgeting out and thinking ahead about what you want to do, know that you need to consider those costs as well. Time qualifier. I am going to explain in more depth how the time qualifier system has changed, because it has completely changed post-COVID. It's the same thing as the charity system for Tokyo. It has completely changed 180 degrees. But here is where it stands as of now. It may change again in the future. We don't know. But this is where it stands as of this year. 25 spots for men, 25 spots for women. That's it. And the fastest of those who submit, there is a standard. For men, it's 2:32, and the standard for women is 3:19. However, because there's so few spots, the standard doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go into that, but just that's what you need to know. And then there's an option for a virtual run lottery. This is not a guaranteed spot. This is paying to run to be put into a lottery. You're paying for a lottery, essentially, right? Okay, we all understand that. So this occurs, there's a virtual half that occurs 8 times per year with 50 bibs. Used to be when they first launched this, they launched it during COVID. And, because everybody was launching virtual during COVID. And so it was sort of like an unknown thing, and the odds were halfway decent for the 50 bibs. And then as the years have gone on, right, it's going to be 2024. It's become really more popular. Everybody knows about it, and the odds have decreased as a result, right? They also launched a brand new option, which is a virtual marathon. This is the first time it's occurred. We do not know what the odds will be, but they have 100 bibs up for grabs. There are 2 options with this. One is to run an entire marathon on your own without stopping. The other is to team up with somebody and do a partner marathon. So you run a marathon between the 2 of you. For that reason, I suspect the odds on this are not going to be that good because it's not that hard for 2 people to get 26.2 miles accumulated over time. But we will see. So the application period, Tokyo is one of those things where the dates are all over the place. Nothing is lined up. It's completely all staggered. I'm going to show you the dates in the next slide, but know that it's depending upon what you're trying to do, which one of these steps, it will be different. But essentially, it's over the summer. Charity is the first option to be up for grabs. If you're opting for charity, you have to decide very first thing. You can't opt to do the lottery and then see how it goes and then go, no, I didn't get in, so I think I'll do charity. Not possible for this race. So this is the flow chart here. This is directly from the Tokyo Marathon website. As you can see, there's colors and lines and dates and all over the place, right? You need a freaking decoder ring to figure out what this is saying. It's all clear and laid out, but it's not that straightforward. So I'm going to go through it. As I said, here in the pink is the charity entry. That is first. They open that up for bids June 26th, and that closed for bids July 13th. So that is when you had to decide you were going to submit to a charity. Then the charities go through, they see how many bids they have, they read your essays and they rank people and they decide who they're going to take and who they're not going to take. And then there is that very short window for the donation period. That was July 14th to July 28th, right? This is why, as I said, you can't put up a website and say, hey, I have 2 months or 3 months to collect all of this money. You have to pay the full donation amount within that window or you don't get a spot, period. And so that's why almost everybody you'll find who does Tokyo Marathon charity just fully pays from their own pocketbook, right? And that's basically the way that system is set up, and that's the way it works. So that is the first thing that comes at the end of June. The next thing that opens is the time qualifier entry. They call that the run as one, and that's there in the blue. So that's August 1st to August 10th. Then at the midpoint of August 14th to August 25th, that is when the lottery opens for Tokyo. It's a complete upheaval, reverse process from almost all of these races. But like I said, you have to plan ahead as to what you're going to do. If you decide to enter for the lottery and you do not get in through the lottery, that is it. Chances are over. There is no more Tokyo Marathon for you that year, right? So you have to completely commit to whatever it is you're going to do. All right, now I'm going to go through the qualifying, the time qualifying, what they call the run as one. So pre-COVID, there were 300 spots for this. 300, 150 for men, 150 for women. The times were also more relaxed. The times were 2:45 for men and 3:30 for women. The times have gone down. But again, as I was saying before, the times are not necessarily that important. What's more important is the number of spots available. It's now 25 spots. That's it for international global running community. So competition is high. Having the standard is not enough to get in. I hope personally at some point they increase the spots to what it used to be, because this is how I get into most races, and certainly how I've gotten into most of these majors. And so I take personal offense to this, but this is what it is, right? So one other thing I want to note about this, the race has to have a world athletics label and be certified as such. It's not USATF certification, which is what is adequate for most of these other races. 90% of the other races are fine with USATF certification. Not the case with Tokyo. It has to be World Athletics certified. The list is very short for American races. The list is short for European races, but the options are for American, Houston, Twin Cities, and obviously any of the world majors. So that's a Boston, that's a Chicago, and that's a New York. Here is the poll directly from the website stating what the current standards are. As I said before, I'll tell you what the times were for this year to actually get into the race. Women needed 2:47 or faster to get a spot, right? The standard is 3:19, right? So people are putting in their application with a 3:17 or 3:18. The time you actually needed to get into the race, 2:47, right? Not even close, not even in the ballpark. Men, it's a little bit less drastic, but their time is already quite fast. So men needed to be under 2:26 to get into the race this year. 25 spots, tiny field, very competitive. All right, now we're moving on. We are on to the second race, the Boston Marathon, which will occur on April 15th, 2024. For those who don't know, this race is always on Monday. Monday in Massachusetts is a holiday. It's called Patriots Day. And it occurs on the third Monday in April every single year. Doesn't matter what happens. If Easter is Sunday the day before, doesn't matter. The third Monday in April is Patriots Day, and that's when the Boston Marathon occurs. So of the races, this one has the least number of options for how to get in. On the plus side, it's sort of straightforward in that way, but this is one of the more difficult ones for a lot of people. So the entry methods are time qualifier. That is the majority of the spots. Roughly 80% of the spots go to time qualifier entries, okay? Charity. Charity entries get roughly 20%, roughly, give or take. Then there's also, you have ITOs. That's for internationals only though, right? No Americans can use an ITO to run the Boston Marathon. And then there's those people who have a 25-year streak. So the time qualifier process is based on the number of applicants, and as has been the case in all recent past, they've had more applicants than they've had spots. that means there's a cut. So they take the fastest that are under the standard. The standards are grouped by age and gender. I'm going to show you what the standards are on the next slide. For those who have a 10-year streak, you must have been running the Boston Marathon consecutively for all of those 10 years. If you are that person, then all you need to do is run your standard. You do not have to have any kind of buffer to get in, period. You can have 1 second, you're in. You have to keep maintaining that streak though. Once that streak is gone, boom, back to zero. Charity. Charity for this race is extremely, extremely competitive. As such, you will need to raise a lot of funds to get into this marathon. I am in awe of people that have raised money, have raised charity funds for the Boston Marathon. Because it is such a huge undertaking, right? The bids are often $10,000 or even more, depending upon how competitive. And the spots for charity are hard to get too, right? So people can apply. You can apply to multiple charities, but that doesn't mean you're going to get in. You have to be accepted, and you have to put a really solid case together for why they should take you, because they have more people than they need. They have more people than they have spots, right? So again, if this is something you want to do, you need to be 100% committed to it. You need to study, you need to research, you need to know what charities you're going to reach out to. You need to have a compelling case. You need to plan ahead and have a means by which you're going to fundraise, because it's a lot of money that you need to fund, right? So again, I personally think all of it is worth it. If you're committed to what you want to do and you love what you want to do, I think it's worth it. But you're not going to halfway kind of like, nah, maybe I'll do this sort of on the side kind of thing. This requires commitment and dedication, right? ITOs. So as I said, not for Americans, but for other countries. There's a full list on the website. All the major countries are included. If you happen to be a person that lives in, I don't know, I'm just going to make up countries. Colombia, Brazil, Honduras, and you don't have a dedicated tour provider for your country, you're allowed to apply to a different country as a tour provider. However, again, this is one of those things. It's completely oversubscribed. It's very competitive, right? So again, tour operators, they have maybe 20 bibs, maybe they have 10 bibs, 15 bibs, and they have 50, 100 people plus who all want those bibs, right? So it becomes about loyalty, about who wants it, you know, who's asked and been on the list the longest. All of these kinds of things come into play. Okay, 25-year streak. I'm just going to say this just because I want to be thorough and outline everything. I assume if you've been running the Boston Marathon 22 years, 20 years, you know about this already. But this is maybe something to aspire to. If you've done 25 Boston Marathons in a row, you no longer have to qualify at all. You don't have to run any qualifying time. All you have to do is continue to run the race. You have to show up on Patriots Day. You have to finish the race before the clock gets turned off. So you have to have a finish that counts. And that's it. And then you can continue running the Boston Marathon until your dying days. I think it's cool. Okay, the application period occurs over 5 days in September, mid-September. Notification comes late September, early October. It does vary somewhat. The dates for this year, September 11th to September 15th was the application, and the notification was September 28th. Notification came a little bit later this year. This year was a record number, a record all-time high of applicants, and as such, the cut was huge. I'm going to show you what the cuts were or have been on this next slide. Here are the qualifying standards for 2024. These standards can change. They have changed, but they will not be changing as of yet. There's no announcement. There are 3 categories there are 3 categories. There are men, women, and non-binary, and then there are age groups. And the age groups, excluding the oldest and the youngest, are in 5-year increments. And you can see here the times for each. As I said, you really can't expect to get in if you're just running this time. It's just a fact that we need to accept, right? This is what the cutoffs have been. I go all the way back to 2011. So the times when there haven't been a cut, weird things happened. Like coming out of COVID, weird things. We've had a lot of weird things, right? Because the pandemic was not that long ago. It was recent past. Most of us remember it. We lived through it, right? And so that threw 1,000 different things off. Pandemic effects were long and lasting. And but I think it's pretty clear that those days are gone. So this year there was 5-minute 29-second cutoff. Record number of applicants, 33,000 applicants. Over 10,000 people cut. Huge number. I really recommend, as a coach and as a runner, if you want to do the Boston Marathon and you are striving to qualify, you need to train to run under your standards significantly. I would train over 5 minutes really, but at minimum 5 minutes. We don't know what it's going to be next year. I have no idea. Could bounce in any direction. I don't think most anybody predicted that it was going to be 5 minutes this year. So we don't know, but for everyone's sake, giving you have the time, and maybe a year or maybe even 2 years in which you want to like pursue this goal, do give yourself the luxury of actually getting into the race by training for something that's under the standard. That's my recommendation. All right, moving on. Now we're going to look at London. London also occurs in April. For next year, it'll be April 21st. So London actually does shift around, and it does vary depending upon when the Easter holiday is. So they will not have the London Marathon on Easter Sunday. And so that can definitely bounce around a little bit. For the most part, London occurs just the weekend after the Boston Marathon. But it can vary by different years. Methods to get into London: lottery, charity, ITO, time qualifiers. There are 2 categories for that. There's the resident time qualifier, or there's the UK club affiliation. I'm going to explain what that means later. So lottery occurs, is open for 6 days. Exceedingly, very small odds to get into this, just so we know. One of the reasons is that you can enter the lottery for the London Marathon with no financial commitment. There's no credit card attached to the lottery entry, right? Other races do not do that. Other races, when you submit your name, you're giving them your credit card at that time and you're saying, bill me. That is not what happens for London. So people enter who may have no real, genuine desire to run a marathon, right? Instead, they get caught up in the hype. And that's part of why the London Marathon, they do it on purpose, right? It's not like an accident, like, oh my God, we didn't realize. They have the lottery occur over London Marathon weekend. I'm going to explain the dates. Over London Marathon weekend, when everybody's jazzed about it and like pumped up and it's in the news and it's on TV, and they just take all the entries and then they draw this tiny number of people. London Lottery has routinely had 500,000 or more entries. 500,000, right? And it's a 50,000 capacity race, right? And not everybody's going to get in via lottery at all, right? Or is even up for a bib out of that 50,000 allocation, right? So incredibly small odds. Keep that in mind if this is the race you want to do. Charity. This race is primarily a charity race. The number of entries for this race are largely charity. So whereas London does not give their exact numbers. Boston does give exact numbers. Boston says 80% time qualifier, 20% charity. London is about reverse of that. We don't know exactly the division, but primarily charity. So this is the way that most people get in that don't live in the UK. There are tons of options, which is great. Huge charities, small charities, all kinds of charities you can think of, whatever you can think of, there's a charity for that, for the London Marathon. The donation amounts are pretty small, relatively small. You will donate to a UK charity, and you will donate in English pounds. So the exact amount you're going to pay, assuming you are not living in the UK, will vary somewhat based on the exchange rate, but roughly 2,500 pounds-ish, give or take. And so that's, pretty reasonable, not too bad. All right, there's also ITO options, and for Americans, 7 different tour club packages available from different companies. So again, here we go back. Many choices. I just picked one base rate, 2,500 for 4 nights. Again, this is not terrible. These packages are not exceedingly exorbitant, right? It's not like pocket change, like, oh, just, pick this out of my pocket, but it's pretty doable. All right, time qualifiers. There are 2 options for this. One, they call good for age. That's the name of it, good for age. That is for residents only. They take the fastest of those. They have not had enough spots for all the applicants, so there has been a cut. The other option is called championship place. That has gender only standards, so there's no age breakdown for that. The times are also faster. The application period, as I said, is in April, directly overlapping the race. And the notification from the lottery is in early July, so way many months later. That's the other reason that people enter and then can just forget about it. Like, oh, July comes around. I don't think I want to run a marathon now, right? So they don't take their spot. Application period for this year, Saturday, April 22nd to Friday, April 28th. And then the notification came on Thursday, July 6th. So here I'm just going to outline the GFA, which is good for age. As I said, they do have age and gender, and the age breakdown is in 5-year increments, excluding the youngest and the oldest. And for the oldest, they go up to 90 plus, which I think is kind of cool. For Boston, they go 80 plus, and that's it. Like, if you're 90, you're on your own, man. But for London, they're like 90, we got you. So here's the numbers. They have 6,000 spots available for this. 3,000 go to men and 3,000 go to women. There is a qualifying window. It is from for this last year. It was for October 3rd to September 30th. So a year, roughly, but not calendar. And the cutoff for 2024, 5 minutes for men. It's always been more for men because they have more applicants for the men. And then for women, it's been 2 minutes. It was 2 minutes this year. The notification for that came November 27th. This again is only for UK residents. When you submit the application for this, they ask for proof from, like, they ask for electric bill, address, something, cable bill to show where you live. So you're not gonna like trick your way into this if you do not live in the UK. Now, this is another option for time qualifying, and it's called championship entry. Here you can see these are the times, and as I mentioned, there's no breakdown by ages. It's just men, women, full marathon, half marathon, and here are the times. So application deadline for this is January 12th for the April race. So not that long before. And the qualifying window for this is a calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. There's no cut or there's no set quota or limit to these spots. If you run the time, you are guaranteed. If you run this time 1 second under or run the exact time, you get a spot as long as you qualify for it. Your race is in the qualifying window, and you must be registered with a club who will then register you and will have your representation with the national governing body in the UK. Those governing bodies are England Athletics, Scotland Athletics, Welsh Athletics, or Athletics Northern Ireland. So, UK. Through a UK club. This goes through the UK club, and then they register for you. They register for you with the governing body. All right, now we're on to Berlin. We're on to the fall marathon. So Berlin will occur on September 29th, 2024. And as I said, this next year will be the 50th anniversary race, which is very exciting. There's a couple of interesting methods to get into Berlin. I'm going to sort of outline them here, but we have the standard ones. We have the lottery, we have charity, we have ITO, we have the time qualifier, and then we have this other category. So one of the options for the other category is doing an inline skate marathon, and you sign up for that. And if you do it and you actually skate through the entire thing, then the next year you're guaranteed a spot into the Berlin Marathon to run. So that's cool. And I'm going to explain a couple of other interesting ways to get in. So lottery, give me 1 second. Lottery for Berlin also has a very unique thing in that you can enter as a team or an individual. So the team can be between 2 to 3 people. And what happens is if you submitted as a team, either all 2 or 3 of you will all get in, or 0 of you will. So if there's someone, say your spouse is also a runner, and you either both want to go and make one trip to Germany together, you both want to go and travel and run together, or neither of you want to do it, right? Because it's a big trip and you don't want to make the trip twice, et cetera, et cetera. So you can opt to enter then as a team. And then either you both get in or you both don't. So that's cool. This lottery option for both people for both options is at the same time, and there's about 1 month in which to enter. Charity, there are many options for charity for Berlin. They're not terribly expensive, which is really cool. I have seen some that start around 600 euros. Obviously, it can go up from there, right? They're not all the same. And the ones that are more popular are more, etc. But the lowest that I've seen for this year, 600 euros. So quite doable for most people. ITOs. There's a huge list on the website. If you live in the US, you have 5 options for this race. Tons of options, and they're not that expensive, which is super cool. Price I saw, $1,500 for a 4-night package. Again, there's additional costs and fees on top of that, but for a base, not too bad. Time qualifier. One cool thing about the time qualifier for Berlin is that it is guaranteed. You run the time, you get in, period. No stressing like, I ran the time, but I'm not sure. I don't know what's going to happen. I have the time, I submitted. As long as all of your qualifying information and race information is correct, certified in the window, etc., boom, you get a spot. Other, I just mentioned before, one of the skate option, there's a training plan option, there's a camping option. I'm going to explain a couple of other things in a future slide. So the application period is from October to early November, and the notification is in early December. These are the dates for this year. September 28th to November 16th. That's when you can apply. Nice long window. And the notification came December 6th. These were the qualifying standards for this year. And they do have some breakdown by ages, but not huge breakdown. So that's like under 44. And then it's between 45 and 59, and then it's 60 and older. And that's true for either male or female, right? So they don't have the huge, 5-year, divvying up, but still they do distinguish and acknowledge that, hey, a 60-year-old is not really gonna, or we don't really expect a 60-year-old, even well-trained and super fit, super strong, incredible runner to run the same time as a 25-year-old, right? So that's nice. They do acknowledge that, and there is a different designation for those age groupings. The qualifications for what the race has to be: AIM certified or USATF works, or it needs to be part of the Abbott AG World Rankings. So there's a full list of those races on the website for the Abbott AG championships, and it's from countries all over the globe. And then, of course, most of your major European races are AIMS certified, and obviously most of the American races are USATF certified. I do really recommend, if you're planning to run a race specifically for qualifying purposes, and it's a small marathon, please do your own homework and make sure it is a certified course. Make sure the certification is current, because sometimes they'll have it certified 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and then they'll go and they'll change the course for construction, this, that, or other detours, and that means the course is no longer certified. So if you really want these times to count and you don't want any trouble and you want to put in the work for something that you've worked hard for, please do your homework on the certification. In terms of the qualifying window for Berlin, huge, luxurious 3 years. 3 years. They gave you from 2021 to application submitting. So you could qualify one time, hypothetically, and run the Berlin Marathon over and over with the same time. Really very lenient here in terms of qualifying. Oh, one thing I do want to add. These times did change for the women this year, and they became more lenient. So I don't know all the age groups by memory, but I know the one that I'm in, and it for this year is 3:10 is the standard, and just last year the standard was 3 hours. So that is, they want more women to run this race. I assume. The qualifying times are now easier. If you are within anywhere in this vicinity and you want to do this race, it might be worth training for this purpose. Okay, now I'm on to that other category for Berlin. Here's one thing I pulled from the website, which is this training package. And this is roughly all total about 600-ish euros. That includes the cost of the bib for Berlin. So quite affordable. These options are listed. I say it here at the bottom. Options are listed in the not selected lottery email. So if you want to put your name in for the lottery for Berlin and you're not picked, they're going to send you an email and say, oh, sorry, we hope to see you next time. Here's some other ways you can get in. And it's going to be a list with links. If you really want to do the marathon and you don't get in the lottery, but you really want to do it anyway, click on those links. There are other options for a couple of €100 and a couple of 100 spots. I happen to know a couple of people that signed up for this, and All of these options were gone within like 5 hours of these emails coming out. So you don't have time to wait around, right? You don't have time to like, I'm not sure if I want to do it. I don't know. Maybe I should think about it. Maybe I should like consider this other thing. When things become available, when these options open, when these applications open, apply, have a decision about what you want to do and apply right away. All right, we're on to Chicago. Race number 5 occurs in October. For next year, it'll be October 13th. This occurs on the on the Sunday, with the Monday being a holiday in the US. It's either Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, depending upon where you live in the US. But that is always the weekend that it occurs. So lots of entry methods for Chicago. Chicago is the easiest of all the majors to get into for kind of anybody. And I'm going to explain why. But here's all the ways in. Lottery, charity, ITO, time qualifier, or ADP. They have 2 different standards. Then there's the legacy streak, and then there's the distance series. Lottery, you have 1 full month to enter. Plenty of time. Lottery odds are pretty good for this race. You know, it's not 100%, obviously, but pretty good. Charity, many choices. They're not that expensive in terms of overall relatively speaking, right? Roughly about 2,000. Of course, there's more. There's some that you might find that are even a little less, but quite doable. ITO, this is for people who are not American. All available on the website. Just search by country. Lots of choices. Time qualifier. These entries too are guaranteed. Run the standard and you get the spot. The standards are pretty lenient as far as time standards go. So you may be surprised. You might actually have the standard or be very close. Legacy. All you need for a legacy entry. 5 prior finishes in 10 years. That's it. That's not that bad. If you do 5 finishes in 10 years, you are guaranteed into this race every single year after that, if you want. The distance series. This is 3 races within 1 year. You need to complete all 3 of these races within 1 year. They all occur in Chicago. There's a Shamrock Shuffle, which is an 8K. That's in March. There's the Chicago Half, which is 13.1. That occurs in June. Then there's the marathon, obviously. That occurs in October. So if you were to do that, say, in 2024, then in 2025, you are guaranteed a marathon spot. And you can continue that year after year after year, right? So the application period is in November. Notification is early December. For this year, it was October 17th to November 16th. And the notification came December 7th. These are the qualifying standards for the race. They have 3 categories: men, women, and non-binary. They do have the age groups. They're not broken down by 5-year increments, but they're 10-year increments, excluding the oldest and the youngest. So pretty, you know, but pretty decent, pretty lenient as far as time standards go. There's a nice long qualifying window. It's actually over a year for the qualifying window. So look at this and research this. If you're close, this might be your method into the Chicago Marathon. Guaranteed entry, no buffer needed. All right, New York City Marathon. This is my hometown marathon. And it occurs on November 3rd. That is the first Sunday in November, which is also daylight savings time. And yeah, so you can always plan to get that extra hour of sleep if you run the New York City Marathon. New York City Marathon has the most entry options of any of these races. And it can be a little bit confusing because there are so many options, but the nice thing is that if one way doesn't work for you, then maybe there's 1 or 2 other ways that work for you, right? So that's really cool. All of the entry options are lottery, charity, ITO, time qualifier, and I'm going to say time qualifier. There's actually two different ways. NYRR time qualifier and non-NYRR time qualifier. I'm going to explain what that means. Then there's the 9+1, NYRR 9+1. There's the 15+ streak, and then there's the virtual 26.2. So lottery, you have 3 weeks to apply for the lottery. Odds have been decreasing. As with all of these races and just running in general, it has become very popular. The boom is here. And so obviously more people apply, more people know about it, fewer spots for you, right? And so that's the way it works. And the other thing about the way New York City lottery specifically works is New York gives a certain number of guaranteed entries, and the more guaranteed entries they give out, the fewer spots there are for lottery. That's probably almost always true for all of these races, but for New York City Marathon, they specifically spell it out, and you can go on their website and they will give you the numbers by the year so you can see exactly what it is. But so we know, the more 9+1 qualifiers they have, the fewer lottery spots they have. And so over time, the lottery spots have decreased. The desire for running the marathon has increased, right? So odds get smaller. Okay, charity. There's a lot of options. They're roughly around 2,500, give or take. These are not available or listed on the website as of now. You have to wait until the lottery announcement comes. That's going to be on March 28th, and then you will be able to see all of the options available. But there will be many of them on the website. ITO, all searchable, lots of countries, lots of options. As I said, I live here, so I'm always like, hey, come and spend money. We love our tourists. But yeah, a lot of people, you know, a lot of options for different parts of the world to come to New York. Time qualifier entries, as I said, there's really 2 different ways to do this. For the non-NYRR, those spots are limited, and they're only going to take the fastest by applicants for that standard by age and gender. I'm gonna show you what those standards are in the next slide. 9+1, this is for locals or people even who are like semi-local. Like if I lived in Connecticut, like an hour drive, but I really wanted to do the New York City Marathon, I maybe would probably opt for this or time qualifier because this is guaranteed. You do this, you get a spot, period. Don't have to like worry about any headaches. Run a total of 9 races. NYRR puts on a race like every other week in New York City. We have tons of races all here, like in Central Park. I live a mile from Central Park, so they're all right here. And all year long. You just do 9, and then you also volunteer 1 time, guaranteed for the marathon the following year, right? It's really great for people who live anywhere close by. If you've done 15 prior New York City marathons, doesn't need to be consecutive. There's no year guideline. You could take whatever, 30 years to do 15 marathons. They don't care. As far as New York City Marathon goes, if you've done 15 before, after that, boom, you're in. Virtual. This is different than the Tokyo virtual, which is a lottery. This is not a lottery. This is guaranteed spots. I'm going to explain how it works in detail, but what you need to know is you do a 26.2 on your own, you track it within certain dates, and you get a spot for the marathon the following year. Overall application period for lottery. And really most of these other methods will occur the end of February, early March, and then the notification comes 7 days after the lottery closes. So real quick, February 20th to March 21st, 2024, next year, for the November 2024 race. Notification will be March 28th, 2024. These are the qualifying standards. 3 categories: men, women, and non-binary. Age groupings, excluding the oldest and the youngest, they only go up to 80. But 5-year increments for all of those in between age groups. These standards, next year is the last year you can use a half marathon time for the New York City Marathon time qualifier. So if you're a person who has run a really fast half, you might want to take advantage of this opportunity, because this opportunity is going away. Bye. This next year is the last year. Oh, and I should add, they have overhauled the way this system will, they've overhauled this process. This used to be first come, first serve. Years in the not so distant past, the number of applicants for this were, about equal to the number of spots. And so if you applied, you got a spot, and that was it. And then what happened is, all the panic and the boom and the rush, and post-pandemic occurred. And all of a sudden they had, I'm just throwing out hypothetical numbers. They had, 5,000 people applying for 1,000 spots. Computers were crashing. People weren't getting in. People weren't getting spots. Everybody was angry. Everybody was yelling. Why is it like this? This is terrible. This is stupid. I hate this. I spent 4 hours on the computer. I didn't get a spot. So they did away with that finally. And they said, now we're just going to take the fastest under the standards. So this 2024 is the first time for this to occur. We have no idea what the cutoffs will be. I could guess. I'm not going to guess publicly, but I do not believe that just running this standard is going to be adequate, because the number of spots that they have for this is limited. And as I've said over and over and over, huge interest, popularity, running boom. People are running faster and better and training harder. And so everybody's doing really well, which is awesome. But the downside is that when you want a spot for something like this, there are so many people and they're all good. Dang, that's annoying, right? No, so do keep in mind, if you're planning to apply for this, you may or may not get in, and we don't know what the cutoff is going to be or what the buffer is going to be needed. But 2024 is the last year that you can use a half marathon to get into the New York City Marathon. So again, if you have something that may be usable, I would really shoot your shot. All right. NYRR time qualifying. Totally different. Not the same at all as non-NYRR time qualifying. NYRR time qualifying is guaranteed. There's no buffer needed. But what's the rub? The rub is you have to run the time standard at one of the NYRR races. And the options are New York City Marathon. If you run the time qualifier at New York City Marathon, you can run the next year. And as long as you keep running that standard, you can run and run and run and run and run and never have to stop running the New York City Marathon. As long as you run the standard, you are guaranteed. Other options are running one of the NYRR half marathons that occur throughout the year. There are multiple options. I list them here. Fred LeBeau, that's in January. New York City half is in March. The women's half, which was formerly called the Shape half and is now called the Real Simple half, is in April. There's the Brooklyn half, which is in May. And then there's the Staten Island half, which is in October. So five half marathons throughout the year in New York City. If you run this time standard for your age and gender, even exactly the second or 1 second under, you're guaranteed a New York City Marathon spot. No fighting, no like, will I or won't I don't know, oh my gosh, I don't know. Guaranteed a spot. If you are able to run this time and you really want to run New York and you live even remotely close to New York City, get yourself to one of these races, you will get a spot. That's my recommendation. You don't have to take it. People are like, well, I don't want to get on a plane for a half marathon, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, do you really want to run the New York City Marathon or not? Up to you. These are your choices, right? All right. Other interesting option that is available. Virtual marathon that grants a New York City Marathon bib. Now, there are only 2 tiers that give this option. And if you sign up for this, if you are trying to sign up for this, you need to pay attention to what these tiers are. Very simple. 1, guaranteed entry. 2, Team for Kids. The cost for both of these bibs, or the cost for, they're not bibs technically, right? Virtual entries, they're both the same. However, Team for Kids entry option, you also must raise an additional $1,000. That goes to Team for Kids, which is the charity. And Team for Kids, I'll just give a personal plug. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but they do a lot for kids in New York City for running, for active kids in the inner city, and it's a super great charity. So, raising $1,000 for them, it's actually good. It's a good thing to do. If this is an option for you. Both of these entries, if you can get one of them, gives you a guaranteed New York City Marathon bib for the following year. So if you were to do that, these are the dates. There's a big wide window where you can run this marathon. For this year, it was October 28th to November 5th. All you had to do within that period is run 26.2 as one continuous activity within a 24-hour period. So you could, run 20 miles, walk 6, whatever, as long as you didn't stop. You don't have to like hammer out, some fast marathon on your own. What I think a lot of people opt to do is they do this, then they sign up for whatever their local little tiny marathon is, so that they have support, and then they can go run a marathon and get like a medal for that. So it's like a 2-for-1. And then for the following year, they get a New York City Marathon bib entry. So this becomes available and at the beginning of June is when this goes on. The date has varied a little bit, like it was the 8th or the 13th, the 17th. You have to pay attention. Very limited number of spots for this, and it goes like that. It literally goes in 20 or 30 minutes. So do not count on this as like, I'm definitely going to get in this way. But if you want an option, this is an option, and it's not too hard. Or it's not too expensive either, right? So June is when that is available, and really quick entry process there. So, apply, and then seconds later, you're in or you're out. All right, I'm going to go through this real quick. This is a new thing within the recent past. This is the Abbott drawings. This is Abbott on its own, right? There's the 6 races, and then there's Abbott. Abbott came up with this bonus lottery for eligible runners. These are this is the requirement. You have to have a certain number of stars. This is the number of bibs available. This is the program as it was outlined for 2023. They have not stated what the program will be for 2024, or even if there will be a program for 2024. I'm just assuming it's going to keep going. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to tell you what it used to be, and here it is. So this is for people who are sort of, close to getting done, but are not done yet. You have to have a minimum of 3 stars for most of these bibs, and for those Tokyo and Boston bibs, you have to have 5 stars. So Not a whole lot of bibs available this way, except for London and Berlin, 500 each. But given the wide pool of people, 3, 4, and 5 stars, it's several thousand candidates available for this. And there's no money involved in this. There's no anything. All you have to do is be registered on the Abbott website with your profile, with your stars. They send you an email and say, would you like to enter the lottery? And you say yes. So a lot of people entering for this, assuming they're eligible. This is a program that it's called the half marathon. It's another virtual thing. And what it involves is running a half marathon. First of all, paying is paying is key. This is for money. You pay them, you run the half marathon, and then you get an extra entry to any of the races that you are eligible for. So again, this is what happened in 2023. No idea whether it's going to occur again. These are the dates for when they have happened. Several opportunities, right? Not too bad. And it's a half marathon. Most people can do that and would do that in training anyway. However, the cost is $45 per virtual. So it's not exactly cheap. I personally don't opt for this. And I don't necessarily recommend it, but whatever, like to each their own, right? If this is something that, is motivating to you, like, and you want to, put all your buckets into one method or whatever, and, you really don't want to do charity for some reason, you want to just keep throwing $45 at Abbott, then this is a way to do it. It's totally up to you, but I'm just telling you what options are available, right? So these are the drawing dates. As I said, it's this has all occurred over this last year. People did get in. I know people who got in, which is really cool for them. But a lot of people obviously didn't get in. So this is not, I wouldn't bank on this as a way to finish your 6 stars if that's what you really want to do. I would not say, well, I'm just going to wait for these lottery opportunities and that's all I'm going to do, because you may be waiting a long time, like decades and decades and decades, right? If you really want to finish, you're going to have to be a little bit more proactive about things and not just like wait on lady luck to grant you some miracle from the sky. All right. So I'm just going to touch on, there's a possibility of more World Marathon Majors coming. And specifically, they have started a process for 3 additional races in 3 additional places. And I've outlined them here: Sydney, Australia, Cape Town, South Africa, and Chengdu, China. So that would make a total of possibly 9 marathon majors. However, what Abbott has stated, and this is directly from the website, is that any additional of the 7, 8, or 9 that may be added in future years, we don't know when or if or ever, they will do a new program separate from the 6 stars. 6 stars are going to remain 6 stars, will be 6 stars. So whatever these other things are will be something else on top of or separate. That, for me, someone who is almost done, is really good news. Because I don't want to have to think about like trying to get all these additional things, because they keep adding and then like the goalpost moves and moves and moves and moves, right? But it'll be a separate prize, separate, what we don't know. They haven't said yet. I have literally pasted what is on the website and what their quote is. So here's what they said: we have decided that the original award for completing all 6 world majors will continue. What the new thing is, we don't know. Sydney For those of you who have not been following along, they had a press release out to say that Sydney could possibly join the majors next year, or sorry, in 2025. So if next year in 2024, they meet these designated targets, which they are on track to meet, then for the 2025 Sydney Marathon, it will become part of the majors. Whatever that means, we don't know. But it looks very, very likely. Why do I say that? Well, for 2024, they've already announced that the Abbott World Age Championships will take place at the Sydney Marathon, and they are granting a provisional star for anyone who competes through the AG Championships to this future program. So they're not coming out and saying, yes, for sure, 100%, but they're kind of giving many, many clues and votes of confidence towards that, right? I will also state, they have said, if you go run 2024 Sydney Marathon on your own, not part of the AG Championships, you will not be granted a provisional star. So my recommendation is, unless you're going to do the AG Champs next year in Sydney, don't try to get out there and don't try to get ahead of the game. I'm going to beat the system. Don't do it, because they've said no, they're not going to give you a star. That's it. That's all. I think I've covered more than enough. If anybody has any questions about any of these races or really just racing or running in general, you're free to email me. I'll list my email here and my website. I will be at several of the majors next year. I will be running myself. I will also have runners, and I'm coaching at a lot of these races, so I hope to cross paths with several of you. And I wish good running journey to everybody as they pursue their goals, whether that be 6 stars or something else entirely. Best of luck.